Yeah, so there's been a sort of core team that's been talking about the ECA and making decisions about what we're going to do as we move forward. So there's been Frédéric Sultan from Remix the Commons, who's based in Paris, and it was with him that I started working on the ECA project as an intern, working on different commons projects that he was into. There's Stako from P2P Foundation, which does a lot of different work on building up commons narratives, and they've developed a really good platform for sharing that with people. I'm just gonna go this way. There's Thomas, who wasn't involved at the beginning, but over the last few months has been working with Commons Network, which is an NGO that works to promote commons in policy and is based between Berlin and Brussels. And let's see, who else do we have? Ruby was there in the first meeting, in Villarceau too, right? And then again in Brussels. Forgive me if I skip over you, I'm sorry, I can't remember everyone. There's Anna in the back who has been developing the workshops with Medialab Prado. There is, who else? David, who's been helpful sort of in the Right to the City group and that movement. So we have Sophie is here, she's co-director of Commons Network that's been involved since the beginning in Villarceau as well. Ivor and Amanda were with us last month in Villarceau when we were talking about sort of solutions to how we can go forward with an assembly governance structure. Who else do we have? Yeah? Sorry? Oh, I couldn't see you, Gael. Gael is an activist in access to medicines and also on the board of Commons Network, the same with Sophie and Thomas and everything. There's Tobias, who I've worked with on another project on mapping for the Great Transition. It's kind of how I came into this whole network of people. And he's with the EDGE funders. Vivian from European Cultural Foundation. Nicolas from Fondation pour les Progrès de l'Humanité. No, de l'Homme, pardon. FPH. And our facilitators, Luis and Celinda, who are with Ciclos and have been working with Medialab Prado to build the workshops. And Tim was also in Villarceau with us. Hey, Tim. So, like, to take stock of everything that we've done so far, I mean, it's only been a year and a half, and the ECA has been really successful in bringing all of these different people together to work on commons, and it's kind of chaotic at some times, but it also leads to a flurry of production and bringing people together, tangible and intangible ways of building the commons movement. So we developed like a series of thematic videos on Right to the City, commons, energy commons, out of the meeting in Brussels. We worked with the Commons Intergroup, which exists in the European Parliament, to work on bringing the commons into policy. What else have we done? We've brought all of you here now for 2 big events and also some smaller ones. In Athens, there was a group working on social and solidarity economy in June and how that relates to the commons. We had in Barcelona at the same time at the Fearless Cities event and the Municipalist movement in Spain, well, in Barcelona, had another ECA meeting together with Transeuropa that kind of served as the first input into what we would do together here. We've had, what else? Throw stuff out if you guys want. The Dutch Assembly, we've kind of inspired, and Thomas has been working on that too, local commons assemblies, which is an idea that we encourage people. DM25 met us at the first, and we had a really great meeting at the start of the European Commons Assembly in Brussels, where we kind of, took a step back and talked about, the issues that are facing Europe today. And like bringing such a diversity of people together from all these different countries and different contexts that are kind of finding that some of their problems are similar on the ground, like what they're dealing with every day. It's the same struggles, and so we should find ways to come together and kind of overcome them. But I think there's this participation access aspect and like giving people these opportunities to come together and find ways to work together is what the Assembly is about and should continue to be about. And that requires, like, in the spirit of commoning, participation and people leading on their own initiatives, and just working with the strengths of what they're already doing and finding synergies there. So, yeah, in that spirit, I have a couple announcements to make because I've been, well, let's say a word. The people that I announced earlier are all involved in many different projects for the Commons. They work really hard, and it's difficult sometimes to manage this assembly at the same time. And so far, it's just been me and Anna have been the only ones as paid coordinators on this project, dealing with the day-to-day little technical logistical things like getting 1,000 Omnia Son Comunia cups made, or thinking about the food or the methodology. And but it's obviously, as I described earlier, like a huge collaboration between a lot of different people. So thank you all for coming and giving your support and your energy, and it's been really great. And it's so nice to finally come together in person and meet you all face to face after a lot of time emailing. Thanks. Yeah. So, am I done? Yeah? Thanks. Oh, hi Felipe. Thanks for moderating last night. Okay, I lost my train of thought. Does anyone have anything they want to add? Or should I pass it to Frédéric to talk about what we did in Relauceau? Yeah? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm an old man and I need some. And I'm not so fluent in English, so I've made some notes to be sure to be able to say what I want to say. It's a long text. We have 20 pages and no. Yeah, if I can sit. Yeah, first I'd like to start to share a story actually. In 2015, in France mainly, and in the Francophone countries, we organized a Commons Festival, the Temps des Communs, le Festival Temps des Communs. It was time of the Commons, if you want. There was many Commons festivals since the last 10 years, and you know obviously them in Finland, in Greece, in Italy, etc. The originality of the Francophone Festival was that it was a festival held in many places at the same time, with a completely distributed organization, and all at the same time, with the events were organized by the local people. In France, it was probably 2,050 self-organized events at the same time. And it was probably, I think, more than 20,000 people concerned by this, and a very large media cover. And then I think it was a crucial step for the progress of the Commons movement in France. I met David at this first time. It was the first time I met David Hammerstein, and he took the opportunity to be provocative and to launch the idea of the gathering of the commoners at the European Parliament at this time. I don't know, you were there, Nicole, or no? Yeah, no. So it was one start. Just another short story. In 2016, the Commons movement organized the Common Space in Montreal, and then you were there. It was within the World Social Forum at Montreal, and it was also a self-organized space, more than 40 activities, that took place, involving 100 of people and probably 20 to 30 people very strongly involved in the organization. The self-organization was based on the use of digital tools, and it was facilitated by Nicole. Thank you, Nicole, for that also. The budget of the event was more or less 25,000 euros, including the fees of the travels, of the intercontinental travels. And we have just the 3 months of full-time contract of Nicole for that, to support that. At the end, the result of this meeting was really important for the Commons movement also at the political level. We generate a charter for building a data commons for free, fair, and sustainable future. That was a kickoff of the convergence of the media for the commons, and we had 2 other gatherings this year with these people. I think it's very important. It's not very visible, but it's something very visible. We also produced 20 interviews, video interviews, and we have made a short documentary on the politics and the commons, or commons and politics. And we also created a card game that simulates the struggle of the commons against the enclosures. Also that it's not very visible in the public sphere, but I think it's also a very important step for the commons movement, actually. So I think this is our superpower, if I can say. These two stories show that as a movement, we know to do that. We know to be efficient. We know to have fun and to work without a hierarchical model of organization. We are able to do that, and it's a very important point. Now, coming to ECA. ECA is not the result of just one provocation, but at least 2. One from David, but also one from me. When I met the founders, or some founders of the Commons in 2014 at Stockholm, I told them that we already had a movement, but we need to create the condition to make it more visible and articulated. We needed to go beyond the old style of advocacy of the social movements. How? First, we needed to invite to a meeting a gender-balanced small group of activists to validate the plan for the Commons movement for Europe, to alert, to survey, to confront, to negotiate with the public institution, and to prepare alternative proposals for policies. 2, we needed to have a sort of European Congress of the movement of the Commons, and a sort of historical moment for the foundation of the Commons movement. And 3, we needed to support a large, self-organized, decentralized, and distributed network that will politicize the Commons by helping each other in their struggles for the Commons and demonstrate to the politicians that they need us. The first proposal was finally the Commons Watch meeting in Villarceau. The Congress, the idea of the Congress was the ECA in Brussels, I think. It was an assembly in the European Parliament. And it was a very successful moment in terms of mobilization and communication, a symbolic of and an historical moment. But we did not develop further how the ECA can be a tool to help to articulate commoners, social movements, and the political spheres. And this is really needed in many fields now. We have a strong commons movement in Europe, actually, just trust me. Look in Italy, for example. There was the referendum for water as a commons, the Rodota Commission, and now the Co-City movement. In Spain, it's difficult to speak of Spain now. But I think that there is a very strong municipalist movement based on the commons. This is the political urban commons movement. It is also the first political victory of the commons in Europe, I think. It's under an incredible attack of the conservative forces, and we have to deploy our solidarity if we want to protect our narrative at the commons here. It's not an issue of independence. It's our narrative that is at stake here. In France, there is a strong articulation between research and activists. Just one example. Last month, we published the Dictionary of the Commons. It was made by 180 people, researchers and activists mixed. And it reflects the state of the art of the collaboration between us in the commons. In Germany, there is a convergence with the degrowth movement, and Peer-to-Peer Foundation is very active in this field. In Netherlands, or you already said, Nicole, we have a big movement of assembly. I will not name all the different activities because we know that we have a lot. But the Commons movement gathers so many people, organizations, initiatives, social, cultural, and political movements in a powerful, decentralized process. It's feeding a narrative. Let's see how it is attracting the social and political force now. So, one more time, yes, we have some superpower in this sense. So, now Villarceau. Sorry to be long. At the end of July, we have launched a message to invite people to self-nominate for a 3-day meeting for a sustainable ECA. 10 persons were volunteered to dedicate 3 days of their life to ECA. It's not nothing, 3 days. The gender balance was respected. 5 women, 5 men. It was an ECA moment at Villarceau. The second one. We had 3 days at the end of September for thinking ECA as a tool for the Commons movement, meaning in part talking about how to organize it and how to govern ourselves. It was a very challenging conversation. The result is a report made by Anne-Marie from Peer-to-Peer Foundation. She's not here, but she did an incredible work to synthesize this difficult conversation. Thanks to her. What is the result of this gathering in Villarceau? First, we realized that it was not possible to solve the problem of governance in such a short discussion. The solution is not a board and centralized coordination. It's not enough to imagine a procedure of membership. It's not just a tool. We definitively need to be more imaginative. So we propose to dedicate some time to do a strategic analysis of what is our movement and how to define what kind of infrastructure we need for it to be functional, how to organize our work all together, how to make decisions. This is the question. How could we redesign an ECA and organize it to be in the service of the movement of the commons? We propose first to take a pause of 3-4 months, and during this time to have someone to do a real research on this issue for us. Someone that will look at the model that has been developed so far by networks to organize horizontal action and various movements. Someone that will look at the ECA archives, all the did and said until now, including the discussion of Villarceau. The task of this person will produce a proposal of governance scenario for the assembly. When we have this scenario, we will invite volunteers to self-nominate for a next Villarceau meeting that will finalize the proposal for ECA and submit it to the members. We will then be able to discuss and adopt a form of governance and functioning for ECA. The result of this process and collective work could even be put in the form of a manual, useful to the ECA and its member, but also for potentially other people. Meanwhile, we also propose in Villarceau that Thomas and me, we try to develop a consensual proposal to carry on with already planned activities for the coming months without jeopardizing them. What do we need to be able to do that? First, to reallocate the strategic to this strategic process the funds we already have we have remaining funds on the different activities, so we can finance this research and process. We only need to clarify exactly how much there is, and of course to define a clear term of reference for the research and identify the proper person with the adequate skills. All the proposals are welcome for that, and I know that some of us have already some ideas. So at the end, I'm confident that we will have an assembly with a bottom-up model of governance, and I'm looking forward to the discussion we will be having now on this. Thank you. And I give the mic to Stako.
Hello. So when we were structuring this final season, we thought, okay, we made the characterization that Nicole was going to be the good cop, Fred was going to be the realist and the professor, so that makes me the bad cop. So I think that we have to get really serious now, so I want you all to stand up. Please stand up, just do this. I know that you're all tired, but this won't take long, and I think that it will be useful for us as a collective to do this. Now that you're standing up, please just hug the person next to you. Just give him a big hug, just, you know, let's squeeze it out, just, yeah. Just high five. Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. Just, you can keep doing this, it's okay, there's no time limit. Just give someone a hug. Hey. Oh yeah, that feels good. Okay, commoners, assemble. Okay, so now that we're feeling huggy, you can sit down if you want, you can keep on standing up, you can do breakdowns. I am cool with everything. Thank you for being here. Thank you for self-organizing so well. Before organizing a conference, there's always a panic, what's gonna happen? But we kind of had the confidence, like, there's some really good people coming here because this is a conference of commoners. And here you are, and here we are, and this is like a good thing. So before we go into the next section, which is the conversation, the big question, what do you want the ECA to be? I wanted to throw out some polemics, some challenges. So these are just some observations, some questions, which we could characterize like the European Commons disassembly. Let's break it down. So what is the ECA? If you go to the webpage, it says the ECA is a process. And that's really nice to say, but that's like saying like, this is a room, this is a street. It doesn't tell you what the process is. So I want you to think about that. And let's break down the name, because this is a big proclamation, a European Commons Assembly. What do we mean when we mean that? So let's take the first thing, European. If we get down with the definition of the commons proposed by Ostrom, a commons has clearly defined boundaries and borders. Do we want to have clearly defined boundaries and borders? Does Europe? Is there a problem with that? Now, European, are we assuming that Europe is homogeneous? Is there one Europe, or rather many Europes? And if we prototype this great commons assembly, are we going to be the white saviors of commons assemblies? Are we going to export European culture? Because there's a tradition with that that's not very cool throughout the ages. Where's la Asamblea de los Comunes Latinoamericana? Where's the African Commons Assembly? Okay, these are questions that we need to take into account. And then we come to the commons, and we happily proclaim, we are a commons, but are we a commons? So let's take the definition. A commons, understood as a resource, and if you're uncomfortable with the word resource because of its extractive connotations, we may say a gift, inherited or created, the community that gathers around the resource, and the protocols to manage it. So what is the resource in the European Commons Assembly? Who is the community? Where is the inside? Where is the outside? What are the protocols? How are they defined? Is it so much a commons? Or maybe, could it be a component of a commons-based peer production system? Are you familiar with what that means? Something like Linux, something like Wikipedia. You have a commons, you have a community creating commons, and you have an infrastructure that facilitates the act of commoning. Is the European Commons Assembly the act of commoning? or is it the container? Is it the facilitator? Is it the content, or is it the substance? Or is the substance, all the acts of commoning that all of us are doing in our organizations, in our networks, etc.? Should the assembly be the leading voice, or should it listen and then amplify? And then the last thing, yeah, assembly, cool. We're at an assembly now. We were at an assembly in Brussels, and then we had Athens, and we had Barcelona, and the one that I'm forgetting, I'm very sorry. But it's also a process, and you just cannot take one element and place it somewhere else. And here I would like to go back to the European dimension, because it sets like the scale or the scope of this assembly. When you have a commons, which is face-to-face, when you're going to see this person tomorrow, that's not something that you scale up and you expect that the same dynamics will work. And I will warn you about the problems of scaling. Scaling is the epitome of centralization. You take something without examining it, and you make it bigger. And you blow away, you homogenize, you take away the variety. So I think that we need to think about crystallizing and not scaling. And we need to think very carefully about how this can become a commons or an enabling infrastructure for the many acts of commoning. And that was my wrap. So now we go back to, I don't want to say you, because I feel that this is a we. So we take the conversation, and we've made the question quite open. And now you're going to tell how we're going to do it. So hey, thank you.
Okay, so after the hugging, there goes the kissing. So, no, not yet, not yet, not yet. No, but I want to ask a question. If I ask you a word to define a teenager, which word would you use? Anyone? Like a popcorn conversation. A word to define a teenager. Difficult? Rebellious? Fun? Lost? Adolescent? Shifting? Experimental? Growing? Vital? Questioning? Okay, that's when you talk about teenagers, that's like normally the main words that come to mind are like, yeah, well, adolescence, which means like it hurts. But actually, young people are brave, they're enthusiastic, they have everything to win in the world. So I'm saying this because the ECA is kind of a young organization. It's only 1 year old. And things that happen to the ECA are things that happen to young people. Okay? So let's think of young people not only as shifting and sometimes a little bit lost, but people that have everything to do in life, they're enthusiastic, they have everything to win. Okay? So with that enthusiasm, we're going to think about the question. Okay? So I'm going to ask you to be propositive, open to listen to other people, to see what they think about what the ECA should be. Try to get as specific as you can. Okay? The more specific we get, the more we grow up. As a group, think about the governance, the objectives of the ECA, think about the process, as Taco has said. Okay? So how are we going to do it? Because we're a lot of people. So as you know, like facilitating is moving around people. We're going to move you around into those groups that are already there. Okay? We're going to have a 20-minute discussion about what the ECA should be. We need, for every group, we need one rapporteur, somebody who's going to take notes, and we need a moderator, somebody giving words, somebody helping everybody to speak, seeing if there is somebody who hasn't spoken and trying to give him or her the voice. Okay? Before we start the conversation, I strongly suggest you to have 1 minute of silence and thinking. If we don't do that, what happens is the first person that talks leads the whole conversation. If we all have 1 minute of just thinking, we all structure what we want, and the conversation is much more diverse. Okay? Sure? Okay, we have another word because there is like a petition to change the thing. So, Nicole?
Is the idea, because you didn't finish yet, is the idea that we would come back together again
Yeah.
and discuss and have that time?
Then we'll have a harvest moment to see what the groups have discussed. But
This is a question of input of what happened before we have a new input.
so is everybody okay with? Can I? Okay. So, but not to run out of time.
I think it just helps people not to be unsatisfied because they feel they haven't been heard. And I feel there's something going on here, and I want to make sure that everybody feels they've been heard. It doesn't matter if we agree with them or not.
Okay.
Okay.
Just before.
Yeah.
Do we all agree like to have like 5 minutes of this time, and see if that's enough, and then
Is that okay?
5 minutes?
Okay. It was a very complicated situation, Villarceau, and there were many different positions. Even amongst the ones that have been introduced, have been part of the core group for a long time. I was new. I was asked to come. I didn't self-nominate. But I found one thing that I took away from Villarceau, which I would like to have you hear before we kind of come up with new ideas. And it was kind of collectively somehow came out of our process with Tim and with others, is that we had the question of how do you make any council that is not just self-nominated or somehow just kind of happens because, well, you have the money to travel or you have the time to do it or your organization pushed you in there or something like that, that the kind of like, well, that's how it happened. How do you prevent that becoming just de facto power without any procedure for that power to be legitimate? And so one thing I took away, just to make it really short, is there should be 3 principles for how to fill any council. And the first is you have people from the previous generation of that same council. So you keep the knowledge of that council, you keep the procedure going, those people who really know what happened before and carry it to the next generation. 1. 2, nominations from all of us. So you can say, hey, I think this person should go to the next governing council. And we should have a few people that are nominated by the whole assembly. That's 2. And 3, which I find very interesting and quite important and radical, is the idea of sortition, which means somebody is chosen, or 2 or 3 people are chosen randomly. So it means that if you're a member of the European Commons Assembly, you not only are here to have fun or whatever, but you have a little bit of a duty that says, well, unless you're otherwise engaged, you should go to that meeting. So you're randomly chosen, and that gives each council, be it the governing council, the organizing committee, or the agenda, 3 different components. Those people who really know what happened before, those people which are nominated by all of us, and those people that are chosen by random so that there's no monopoly. So it gives us diversity. So I wanted you to just hear that diversity, and maybe I'll pass it to somebody else who would like to contribute. All right, thanks. I'm Ivor.
I still want to respond actually on ECA as a young organization. I feel we are at the point of convergence of work that has been done over decades by commoners, and that the assembly is actually the first moment of convergence in Europe where we come together. I don't feel that's only young, like a kid, but I feel we are all carrying this responsibility, and I'm really searching for the ways to take this responsibility together. So before we are fragmented again, you know, like I really want to stipulate that this is really a moment that we can take and we can really form the future. That was it.
Any other voice? Okay. So to finish talking about what are we going to do, I suggest you we're going to talk for 20 minutes. For the first 15 minutes, there is like an open talk about all these things, about everything that has been said here before, the proposals that have come up. And then the last 5 minutes, we try to get down to a phrase. Okay, if we reach consensus, great. We write down the phrase. If we get close to consensus, we write it. If there is a strong disagreement, we also write it, that some people are pointing this direction, some other people are pointing.
It's a few sentences. I think that contradiction is healthy. I think that conflict can be healthy. So if in your group you have a contradictory statement, that's okay too. You can put that together into a few sentences that reflects what the emotional tone of the group is.
Okay. Do we have any doubts about it?
So just to make sure I get it right, we're supposed to write 3 or 4 sentences that capture the consensus and or not, or both, of our group. Okay, in answer to this question. Yes? Thanks.
Okay, so to make the groups, let's do it as fast as we can. There are going to be 7 groups of discussion. Okay, there are already 5. We need to put 2 more here and there. So I'm going to point at you and you will say a number up to 7. When you reach 7, the next one will say 1. Everybody understands it? Then the 1s go over there. Number 2s go that corner. Number 2s go to that corner. Number 3s are in the centers. Number 4 would be there. Number 5 would be there. Number 6 over here, and number 7 over here. Okay? Okay. But it's kind of in order. I'll repeat. Okay, so 6. I suggest you to do it in order because it'll be easier. 6. Okay. 6. 1. 2. 3. 7. Seven over there. 1. 3. Okay, is there anybody missing here? 3, 4, 5, 6. So the groups are number 1s over there, number 2s. Okay. Number 1s here, number 2s here, number 3s here, number 4s here, number 5s here, number 6s over there, and 7s are going to be there. Seis? Sevens over there. Sevens are going to be here. People, remember how yesterday, no, not yesterday, but 2 days ago, the volume was wonderful. Everybody was talking in a low volume. I remind you how nice it was. So please keep that low volume and everybody would hear themselves. Choose a rapporteur and choose a moderator, please. No, that's one. Five there. Okay. So we choose moderator, we choose rapporteur, and we have a minute of silence that it can start now, so everybody thinks about the questions by itself, by himself, by herself. Okay, the minute for own thinking has passed. So you can start debating whenever you want. Okay, we should be closing the conversations, finishing them up.
in order to have a clearer identity and create a narrative. Then the second assembly in 1 year will be like about so next year we come together, create production knowledge, and then in 2 years we start the election, and then we go there. So in this sense, I think that the ideal priority is to be effective all together.
We need to be getting back to the big group. Let's get back to the big group, please. There's still half an hour of plenary, and the sooner we get here, the sooner we can go for a beer. And that's a beautiful poem. Yo creo que, porque yo creo que en el typing, escribir, tener aquí frases como entre líneas, yo creo. Yo diría que lean. Es que yo creo que no. Okay. Are we back to the plenary, please? Back to the big group. We're not going to have time to type it, so I think we're going to read it because
It's hard to get 3 or 4
Is it-
sentences.
can you read the sentences? You think so?
Maybe.
Are they readable? I mean, I think. If we type them right? Okay. So we're going to harvest. We're going to harvest whatever has been discussed in the groups. So I would ask the rapporteurs, the 7 of them, to come over here and read the sentences that they have come up with. Okay? Everybody in their groups, you have come up with some sentences. These sentences are going to be typed into a pad, so they are for everybody to see them. Okay? They're going to be commonalized. So can the 7 rapporteurs come here, please? Okay. I think if we type it, it can take forever. You can type it somewhere in the near future, meaning the near future, like the next 2 days. And so, please, can you read?
Yeah, so what we came up with as a group was the following. Is someone typing or no? Okay. The ECA, according to us, is an open assembly that brings together commoners in Europe, hereby strengthening the commons movement and creating synergies among initiatives, organizations, and actions. In order to do so, we need a governance structure. That was it.
Hi everyone. So group 5. So what should ECA do, or what should it be? So we kind of agreed with the general idea that it should actively promote the commons discourse, affecting policy, whether that's politicians' advocacy for this movement, for the discourse, a social movement, an actual claiming of the term. And in response to that, though, there's this idea that there needs to be a prioritization of issues as a method of how we move forward. So we can't address every issue at one assembly meeting, so maybe you have to have multiples of that.
What do you... Oh. Clap, clap. What do you want the ECA to be? We want the ECA to be a convening arm, a fluid set of lenses in a poly-European space where shared experiences can pollinate one another and be amplified, where little experiments reconnect with an ancient tradition that finds a continuum in present circumstances. This convening arm needs to be accessible, colorful, practical, reproductive, and generative of new processes of commoning counterculture.
Okay, that was a tough act to follow. Thank you. We had talked about a lot of things in our group, so we didn't get the sentences completely down. But I think where we found consensus was kind of like what Stako was saying, the contradiction. So there's one proposition where we want to see the ECA as a facilitator of all of this commoning action and cross-pollination, kind of like what you were saying. And then that we also want to see it as a political actor in society specifically, but that, and that we all want both of those things, but that there's growing pains and maybe you need to prioritize one in time before the other, so yeah.
So in this group, we came up with three ideas. ECA should be an enabling infrastructure for, among other things, to bring more resources to local commons projects. And within Europe, not only the European Union countries. ECA should be also an umbrella for bringing together different processes. So, for example, in my group, we had someone coming from Transeuropa Festival and other persons who heard about ECA during the Fearless Cities Summit in Barcelona a few months ago. So ECA is kind of bringing these people together, which is a useful role. And then the last point was the relationship between ECA and European institutions. And we agreed that ECA should kind of bridge the gap between local commons activism and work and the European institutions. So, and clearly there is a request for a kind of European advocacy for commons-friendly policies. Then I just, where's the facilitator? Here. Because actually I wanted also to say a few words about the, how ECA has been funded. And I should have said that before we started the working groups. So can I do it now, or there will be another moment for that?
Let's just do the two, and then you take the time. Otherwise, I will feel too. Yeah, just let's finish this. Wait, no. Okay, so in our group, it's kind of redundant, but it's also a positive sign. We also discussed that ECA should be place or platform for getting to lobby on a political and policy level, but also on the other scale to try to bring the concept of commons and commoning to people which are not using it yet, so to give more access to the common movements, and also have like an event to network and get to know other like-minded people. Also a place to where you can find tools and methods to actually enrich your practices. Should be a mixture between an assembly and an organization, and also should be the place where we actually see and act and behave as the new Europe we want to see. So basically the suggestion was to have also from those days more like thinking as creating a backbone organization, which then functions with working groups as circles that are fluid and self-organized based on interest and resonance, which where the assembly could be one, the policy level could be another one, or the specific now existing working group could be even others, where you would need to still have a fluid core where the working groups and the backbone people will actually be exchanging to keep it forward, and that's it, I think.
For us, the European Commons Assembly stands for imaginative democracy, but also including those that are not visible. It is facilitation and capacity building, exchange of practices, models, proposals, toolboxes, and making space. And it's enabling legitimacy in order to claim a voice or power, and to have this exchange. Make change.
Okay, so there was a suggestion to have like an open mic for brief remarks, maybe doubts. There is no time for a big debate, but I don't know if anybody wants to. I would give it like 5 minutes maximum. If it's less, even better.
I just want to thank you all for being here and thank the facilitators and thank the space and the day and just be grateful for a moment. It's very soft, but it just came to me that, you know, you're here and it's wonderful and you've put a lot of effort and energy and mental power in this and just saying thank you.
No other voices? Okay, so before closing, there are 3 people that are going to come here for closing this meeting, this assembly. But I would like everybody to think about this young person, which I agree that it comes from old movements. And this is a young, enthusiastic activist person that wants to change the world, and this person is the ECA. Oh, we have a... Oh, sorry. I thought there was this open mic moment, and I thought you didn't want to talk about it.
I'd like to also...
Start, no? Yeah, so I just wanted to say, to explain a little bit how we managed to support this process from the beginning. I mean, so I work with the Charles Leopold Meyer Foundation, and I'm also involved in the progressive funders network, which is EDGE, Engaged Donors for Global Equity, and Tobias here is a European director of EDGE, based in Brussels. So with my foundation, Charles Leopold Meyer Foundation, we have started a program on the Commons in 2015. It's not a lot of money, and we've been supporting Remix Commons, the French Commons network, and we have been discussing also with Fred and other people when this idea of starting a European process has been launched. Of course, so one thing we did is to be part of this discussion, but the other thing we did as well is to bring other foundations, European foundations, working, supporting, financing, resourcing the Commons through EDGE. Of course, we were not the only foundation working on the Commons and supporting the Commons, European Cultural Foundation as well, through a more cultural lens, and Open Society Initiative for Europe as well. So we came together, and I want to say that it has been a very fruitful collaboration among funders around to resource this process. So that's very important. It doesn't happen very often in the philanthropy sector, so that's something we can be proud of, I think, even if it's never, enough, and we can do more. My last word is about the future of ECA. I don't think, that's my personal point of view, that, of course, foundations should not decide what this future should be with funding choices. So, and it's a very delicate question, because then that means that we need to be, approached with some kind of proposal, because in the end, the money has to go to someone, somewhere, to an organization. And in the ideal world, it's not up to us to decide where this money should go. So that's my, maybe it's not a conclusion word, but I wanted to say that publicly.
I think that's really good to hear all these names of those organizations behind, and there's many more, I think, that we should hear all of them, because I'm sure some of us are here because our organizations made it possible, and we haven't heard those names, and we should. And so, for example, Transeuropa Festival was actually made possible through a European grant, which was also only made possible through organizations applying for that grant, and that includes, Athens Sin, which you probably haven't heard that term. It includes Perpetuum Mobile, which is an organization founded by Marita Mukkonen and myself. And so that money was the seed money for creating Transeuropa Festival here, which was the reason why we made it to Madrid. So Perpetuum Mobile has a right to also have its name. And I think it's important that all these names are heard. It's just like before. The more they're heard, the better, and the more people feel like they're part of the process, not just listening. So, thank you.
Okay, so any other organization that wants to? No? Speak now or shut up for the next 15 minutes. Oh, okay.
Just to say that, I mean, understanding that there are very difficult discussions, and that was also said about Villarco, that it's very hard to come up with one suggestion now, but I do think it would be good to be able to keep moving forward, that we collect whatever kind of ideas and suggestions that people would have. I mean, somehow, if we cannot take now some sort of next steps, somehow we should together keep talking about things like governance, decision-making, and other issues. So how are we going to do that? Where are we going to collect them?
So, okay, I think so. That question is going to be explained by Sophie later, I think. Okay, so before closing, I would like everybody to stand up again. There's gonna be no kissing. Don't worry. And think, okay? Think not only about what can the ECA do for you, but what can you do for the ECA, okay? Because here we have a lot of people supporting this organization, and every one of you has a superpower there. Can be any superpower. It can be, I can bring funds, I can write projects, I'm good with advocacy, I am good facilitating, I can dance, I can make people happy, I can make people dance, okay? So think about what's that superpower you have that you're going to provide the ECA for growing up, okay? Think about it. Okay. You might have 2, 3, 4, it's okay, but think of one that is going to make the ECA grow as a stronger group to foster the commons, okay? And when I say 3, you're going to yell it, you're going to scream it out loud, so the whole Madrid listens to it, okay? And hopefully, like, all the pollution disappears with the scream, okay? So, 1, 2, 3. I didn't hear. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So, for closing, I'm going to ask Sophie, I think Hillary and Anna Sophie that are going to close this wonderful meeting.
Oi, oi. Hello, everybody. I was asked to participate in this final assembly, and I was asked actually to just give my impressions. And for me, I actually came to the ECA with many high expectations. I would have to say that most of them were met,
I'm not saying that I'm disappointed, but I would like to start with this idea of expectations in order to talk about this last question. Because everybody came here with an expectation, because at the same time, parallel to our expectations, we had the imaginary of what the power of the ECA was and what we were going to get from the ECA. I guess it's easier to relate to what we're going to get from this experience than what we can give. So in my case, I'm a PhD student, so I came to learn about tools for democracy, tools for participating. And I guess what I got in return was much more than I was expecting, so it's a very nice surprise having been in this assembly. That's the first thing. But the thing is, it's important to talk about imaginaries, and it's important to construct imaginaries, but it's important as well to deconstruct ideas. So I guess that most of you will leave this room with different feelings. And the important thing, as Luis said, it's what can you do for the ECA? Maybe the ECA will not take shape now, it will not take shape in a year, but it will take shape, and it will take some kind of shape according to the kind of engagement that you all and we all do in this organization. For the second, like 2-3 points. And the second point is that we have to have a reality check. We all come with the dreamy expectations that we're going to change the world. But let's face it, we're going to face failure. But you have to learn to be resilient. So you have to learn from every failure you have to grow, and in order to have to be polished, let's say, from every failure we have, in order to keep on working. And the third thing, just to end up with a happy remark, I strongly believe that commons are enabling tool for democracy. I guess that we have been calling the common society, but I guess like one of the big issues that we're facing is democracy and how to participate in it, how to shape it. And I really think that commons can spark a virtuous cycle that we can help into transforming and a transformative process for society. And I believe that more than commoners, because after this meeting I really don't know what a commoner is or what a commoner looks like or what should do, but I guess that as soon as we start working, we gain some capabilities, we gain some knowledge, and we actually become better citizens. And I guess that as citizens, we have political rights. We get aware of political rights, of civic rights we have, but we also have duties. So don't forget the hard part of everything of the work. And finally, I think that commons, as a social movement, have the power to render back the people the sovereignty. So think about it. Thank you.
So in the sort of few minutes of seconds of panic before as I walked up, and I was responding, I was thinking about the facilitator's question, what do you think you can do for the ECA? And I was thinking about my kind of friendship over these last few days with Anna-Sophia. We've kind of ended up, talk about random choice, we were in a workshop randomly at the beginning, and we kind of bonded, and then we were asked to do this fairly randomly, and then we were in the number one, blah, blah, blah. We were both number two. So I wanted to build on that and say that maybe one resource, one capacity we all have is the capacity to make friends. And actually, I don't know, I must feel there's an article coming, I'm an editor, so there's an article on the politics of friendship and actually how important friendship is as the sort of, I don't know, the glue that makes a movement flourish. I mean, certainly the women's movement, which was kind of fundamental to my life, people say, oh, there's no women's movement. And I say, well, there is. And they can't say, well, where does it meet? You know, and I can think, well, actually, okay, there's no meeting. Well, there are lots of meetings, lots of initiatives, but there's just this very strong network of friends so that whenever anything happens, like as soon as the Jeremy Corbyn thing grew up, all my old feminist friends, you know, all with grey hair, all from the 70s, all kind of rang up and said, hey, you know, we've got to meet. What are we going to do? Anyway, so friendship. But that's one thing I feel I've gained. And also one thing that makes me also, well, influences my conception of the commons. I mean, my brief for speaking was very vague and very specific. Stacco said, you remember that quote you gave from Shelley at the Fearless City? So we just want that, you know. So anyway, at the end, I'll give that. But when I came a bit like Anna-Sophia as a bit of an outsider, I thought. And then I saw all these people that I knew, But I knew them, one or two, like Frederick, from discussions of the commons, but many others from all sorts of things, campaigning for the right to the city, the social solidarity economy, campaigning around energy and water. And it made me think that actually, in a way, the point about the commons at this moment is that it's becoming increasingly both a concept and an exemplary practice that sort of, in a way, brings people together and frames many different kind of attempts to go beyond the kind of old Cold War dilemmas and dichotomies of the market and the state. And I was noticing also that, just to develop this point, that it's very multi-generational. There are people here from both the sort of 68 generation, like me and Beppe, wherever he is, there are a few that I recognize, and then people from the alter globalization movement. And I was thinking, what do we have in common besides our sort of militancy and so on? And, and I think one thing is that we're all generations that have become leftists, radicalized, socialists even, in spite of actually existing socialism. I mean, the older generation, our parents' generation, became socialists because of, you know, the Soviet Union, for God's sake, you know, the welfare state, you know, because of actually existing socialism. And we've become socialist in some way, or socialistic, in spite of actually existing socialism. And it seems to me that the commons is key concept, kind of developing, building on those original values of communism and socialism in a way that leaves open the institutional form, and in particular, the relationship to the state and the market. So, okay, Ostrom gave quite specific guidelines for institutional forms, but her definition left open relationships between the state and the market. And I think this means, as we found in our workshop, that we're on a kind of search. So we're a particular kind of movement that is actually not about propagating a program and a manifesto, all worked out, you know, with the whole kind of like A to B, very instrumental. But we're actually experimenting. I mean, in our workshop, we quoted, is it Antonia Machado? I think it was reported back. Anyway, we make the path that we walk. And I think that's got a very specific sort of implication. And I think that it means, firstly, quite a, well, it's a break from the instrumentalism, which was what, in a way, produced many of the idea of the ends justifying the means, is what produced many of the corruptions of socialism as we've known it actually existing. And I think this idea of an experimental, searching organization and movement, you know, breaks from that sort of instrumentalism. I think it also means, which I've noticed here and has been one of the really good points, a real self-consciousness about what we're producing in our organizational forms. Are we producing kind of monstrous organizations dominated by men who make long speeches? I mean, women do too, I have to say. You know, or is it also producing like a cozy clique of people that know each other and are very nice and cozy with each other, but actually to break into that? So we're very, I think there's a self-consciousness about what we're creating, because, you know, we have to create the commons. I mean, in our workshop about the treasure hunt, we kept saying, well, it's not like the treasure is at the end, we're creating it. So in that sense, the commons are a means, not the end. They're a means to social transformation, echoing what Anna Sophia said. And I think this is a very radically new approach to organization, because organization in the past has always been a means to an end, rather than itself a means. So when Gail Krekarian talked about solidarity as a commons, I thought, yes, absolutely, because we're creating solidarity, we're creating the commons, and in a way that's the other key point that Ostrom mentioned, you know, emphasized, that self-governing aspect of the commons, that we're creating it all the time, as we are with, say, open software, we're creating it. And I think this applies to the notion of knowledge. We're completely overturning the traditional old left idea of knowledge as being, you know, the experts, the vanguard. We're saying actually knowledge is rooted in experience. It can be tacit, practical. It can be expressed through experiment, through actually doing things. And I think this also points to another feature of the movement that we're part of, which is we're a movement that's productive in a sense. We're creating alternatives because we're putting our values into practice. We're using our knowledge, like the experience of Madrid. Christina, I think, talked about how they develop and find means of expressing the knowledge in the communities. So we're starting from not just the people as a force to be mobilized on the streets, but actually the people as knowing, knowledgeable people. And I think this is just, I'll finish quite soon, that this has created a strength in our organizations that means, you know, we feel the confidence to occupy the political institutions, as in Barcelona. And for me, you know, it's extraordinary in the Labour Party. I would never have joined the, ask me 2 years ago, and I would never, ever have joined the Labour Party. And now, I mean, I just have to, you know, because something is happening there. There is an occupation of the Labour Party that could mean a real resource, political resource for transformation. But, you know, all these institutions that we occupy, whether it's municipal government or the Labour Party, they're still, you know, the power of the old institutions is still there. So even, you know, Jeremy Corbyn, you know, ooh, Jeremy Corbyn, you know, his politics is still, it's like quite paternalistic, quite from the top. And I think that what we can be about is a movement that's really productive from below. And this is where I'll finally end up by just quoting Shelley. And Jeremy talks about we're for the many. We want a government for the many, not the few. And he himself is indirectly quoting Shelley. And I just want to give that quote and then make one remark, and then I'll finish. So he said, sorry? Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not reporting back. No. I just. Oh, okay. No, I just was told to kind of say some of my own experience and feelings. So, yeah, no, I am wrapping up. Sorry, I'll just wrap up with Shelley. Okay, so he said, now I've gone and lost my. Got a story, start again. 079. Sorry. Okay, so he ended up saying, this was after the massacre of Peterloo, the massacre of the movement for the vote and so on. He ended up, rise like lions after slumber, in unvanquishable number. Shake your chains shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep had fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few. And I think it's interesting, he chose lions, which are the sort of intelligent, most intelligent beast, because in a way he's talking about for the many, but also by the many. And that seems to be, in a way, the implication of the commons. We're talking about a new kind of politics, which is constructed as it's made. Sorry to be a bit long.
So, thank you very much. I think there was maybe a misunderstanding about what we're really happy to have you share your experiences. It was very lovely, both of you. Just to and I think this relates a little bit to what Herluir and Anna Sophia just said, but also to remind, I think that we are in a context of urgency. It's not just you know, kind of getting together and creating narratives and these. There is the context of Europe and, well, nationalism. We're in Spain right now. Things are happening. So for me, it's very much the need to also have make this outwards change, to have visibility and to organize and to develop these best practices in the context where we are at, yet politically in Europe and globally. So I just also wanted to take the opportunity to thank the funders for supporting us. FPH, Nicola from FPH, Vivian is here from European Cultural Foundation, OCFA, TIN is here, Open Society Foundations, and the support also of EDGE as an umbrella. Yeah, just to also, what's very important is that we take what is produced here. We'll make the rules from the people who have been involved in the coordination committee, and also the people from and Medialab Prado. I of course want to thank, who have been a super partner in organizing all this. So the people who have been involved from their side and also from our side in the methodology and producing and the production of it, there will be an effort to collect all of it, translate it into forms that are digitally shareable, also the visuals, and we will share that with you and create ways for us to keep working on it. Also what you mentioned about how can we keep these proposals and governance, and how are we going to move forward on this, because it is indeed, I think you illustrated that really nicely. It's not so clear. It's like we are trying to do something new. It's a new form of body. It's not, we can't use models that have been used by many for a long time. And there is examples around us, because this is not just us that are developing in this way. There is examples, but we have to develop them, adopt them, change them. Somebody just said fail and then feel better, right? But we have to also create a channel for people who wants to be involved and who has ideas, to be able to contribute and be part of that conversation, which we, of course, all, that's the idea. So I would say if you want to be part, you just make yourself heard to somebody of the coordination committee that did this, or you start a Lumio thread, or it should be easily enough, and there will be a response. So what else? So, oh yes. Yeah, that's obviously for me, it is also, I would have loved to see a clear proposal on participatory tools and a way to move that. For me, it's also not, on how to have discussions. The Lumio that we are using is not perfect for discussions. It's good for making decisions. And there have been different proposals, like, we should use Rocket Chat, we should use Discourse, they are better for that, and I think there will be a switch to these fora as well. And the other thing is just clearly, it's just the decision-making structures, the way people the way we can be inclusive or we can be open, that's something you need to put in place a process and a governance, and we just don't, it's not very clear right now how to do that, and that's what we do, what we have spent time on. So I don't know if you want to add to that, if there's...
Yeah, like, we had a conversation earlier in the smaller group, and you said, like, maybe we need to scale down and take a step back, right? I hear what you're saying. Personally, I'm also drained from this experience of organizing, but I'm excited that the event is over, because what's important is having all of you come in and participating, and like, you took the initiative to come jump in on the process, and I appreciate that. I feel bad because sometimes I wasn't able to give you the best way to do it, like, successfully, It's hard. I'm talking with a lot of different people, and we don't have that quite figured out yet. But I'm excited that the event, we're concluding now, and we're getting our feelings out, and now we can do more of that, like, productive building of tools and solving some of these problems too together. Like, I think we have to scale back, right? Like, we're not going to solve everything in one day, so. yeah, thanks. But I really appreciate your participation in the process, and that's very important. And on that note, we have some cups and things lying around Medialab Prado, which has been really great host. And so if you guys want to help clean that up, like jump in, like take initiative. I'm sorry we can't always fit everyone in, but like the energy is there, right? So again, thank you. Yeah, we have to find better ways to do it. Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we are finalizing this meeting, and so we will not restart now a long conversation, or we can do it and go to have a drink for that. For me, it's important to register all the remarks and to say, okay, we have these remarks, we are going, how we say, on s'en va avec ça, we are going out with that, and we are all working hard for doing what we think the best, but we have just to register all these remarks and continue the process, and to just to hear all the people who are saying something for what it is.
Okay, I mean, what we've heard now 3 times, and by the way, I'll just admit what I shouted when everyone was shouting. I said my shout was question, so that's what I hope I can contribute. It's not an answer, so like always ask one more question, and try to find like a way of getting to the next step. And we've heard 3 times saying, well, we have to think about it, and we'll listen. But how do we do that? And I think what we're now kind of being told is there's no clear what's going to be the next step, who's making the decision how to listen. So we have to say, let's put some proposals on Lumio and say, this, or that, what would you propose? Do you like it or not? And then have a vote. That's what Lumio can do. And if those who are active, please get on Lumio and we'll create that vote. At least we have a procedure to move forward.
Look, I feel like, I don't know, like it's 7, right? I think we can't solve all these issues now. We can, and it's great to have everybody's voice heard. One thing I do want to say is that tonight there's still a program, and we're in collaboration with Transeuropa Festival, and they're at 8 o'clock. Nave 16, I think that's in Matadero as well. There will be a show.
Casa de Reloj at 9:30, which isn't that far from here. There's another exhibition, Adrisa, Everyday Borders from Africa, from Transeuropa.
It's a music visual show, right? Okay, so thank you all very much. Okay, so we'll put the address up here. I think it's at 8 o'clock. First one's at 8, second's at 9:30, and then we can keep the conversation going. Yeah, and here's last word by Anna.
Nobody has done it, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to thank Medialab that has, welcomed us. The fact is that this, it might be that the fancy aspect of the Medialab has misguided sometime, but this is a space that really relies heavily on self-organization of people, of cleaning up after ourselves, putting chairs here and there. I think we have tried very hard, but maybe we need to make a last effort, or please take every cup, bottle, piece of paper on the floor and organize the chairs nicely in 2 blocks. You know, I'm sorry to be this, so precise. Yeah, like 7 chairs here in a row, another 7 chairs here, and then we go until we run out of chairs. And yeah, thank you very much.